Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. My name is Dr. Jill Emanuele, and I'm a psychologist and Senior Director of the Mood Disorder Center here at the Child Mind Institute. To meet the unprecedented needs for mental health and parenting needs for the coronavirus crisis, the Child Mind Institute has gone borderless. We are here with gold standard clinical care, advice, and resources for children and families wherever you are, and online and all of which is online and accessible to everyone. Here's what we can do to support you during this crisis. We are providing gold standard mental health care remotely for new and existing patients with telehealth while maintaining the same high quality care. We have free comprehensive resources for families at childmind.org/coronavirus. You can also sign up daily for parent tips at childmind.org. And on Facebook, my colleagues and I are answering your questions just like this at 10 and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Monday through Friday. And finally, our Facebook group, Parenting During the Time of Coronavirus, is up and running, so please join us there. We're here for you wherever you are, and please contact us with further questions about how we can help. I hope you'll take advantage of our resources and share them with your networks. So for today, we're going to be discussing looking out for depression and how to mindfully cope during this time. So I'm going to be talking about this and answering questions on this topic and others, but if I run out of time, there's plenty of other opportunities. There's two ways you can get what you need. One is we'll be right back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. to answer more questions. And then we have a team looking through your questions daily, so they will incorporate answers into our resources at childmind.org. So again, this is I don't have to tell you that this is an incredibly challenging time, and every day brings with it more challenges. One of the things we've been asked multiple times a day at this point is, what do I need to be on the lookout for in terms of depression? How do I know if my kid is doing okay? They seem really anxious. They seem really sad or depressed. What can I do to help them? And so I'd like to really focus some of the questions today on these things. One of the things I want to tell you about depression is kids, and especially teenagers, will often show sad mood. And during this time, you're going to see mood changes. You're going to see mood fluctuations and sadness and anger and all these different kinds of things. The thing we look out for with depression is severity and duration. So let me put that into plain English. What you want to look out for is if there's any significant change in your child's presentation. Are they more sad than usual? Is that lasting more than several days? And is it associated with other changes that aren't looking so good, like changes in appetite, changes in sleep? So if you start seeing things like that, by all means, talk to someone to see if your child may need more support during this time. The good news is that we have many effective ways to cope, and mindfulness is one of them. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. So please send in your questions, whatever you have, and I'm happy to try and answer them for you. So I'm going to start with the questions we have already. So the first one I see is pretty straight up. Teens are bored. Yes, they are. Can mindfulness help? Yes, mindfulness can help, actually. So let me explain what mindfulness is very briefly. Mindfulness is essentially just being in the present moment with full awareness, being in the moment right now with full awareness and non-judgmentally. So we talk about mindfulness as a way to help cope with emotions, to help deal and sit with emotions. So yes, our teens are bored. They don't have a lot of variation in their lives right now comparatively to what that they're used to. So what you'd like to try and do is to practice mindfulness. Now, it's hard to explain mindfulness in just a few moments. People associate it sometimes with deep breathing. Some people associate it with mindful eating, which is focusing on the one thing you're doing in that moment, mindfully eating. But I really think that the best way to give you tips on mindfulness, because teens are bored, is to use your five senses. So you can look at anything and be mindful. You can look at a sunset. You could look at anything in your apartment. You could look at, or your house. You could look at the colors outside, the colors inside. Anything you can see, you can look at mindfully. You can listen to music mindfully, focus on the song and just the song, or focus on the lyrics. So what I encourage you, and using all your other five senses, obviously playing with pets, smelling things, eating things. What I encourage you to do is find different ways to be in the present moment and teach your kids how to withstand that moment without getting distracted by something else. That's my quickest explanation of mindfulness that I've ever given, and I'd probably be able to give you a little bit more information as we go along. So the other thing is with teens being bored, I'll just add this on a little bit. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Sometimes I think it's helpful for parents to introduce to them things that are not in their normal world, that are maybe old school or from like decades ago that people used to do a little bit more regularly, or sometimes still do now, such as puzzles, sometimes coloring, sometimes reading books together with family members, taking a walk, different things. People still do that now, but things that people will do to be able, that don't involve screens, so you can get a little variation in life at this point. Let me give you another question. So another one is, can being mindful help teens manage the onslaught of social media? Yes, mindfulness can definitely help with that. So and I'm not certain, of course, what the question is in terms of onslaught of social media, but one of the things that we're concerned about right now is that our teens are incredibly tied to their screens right now, and even more so because there's only so many things that they can do, especially being in the house all or most of the day. So again, you want to really practice this idea of being in the present moment and being able to focus just one thing at a time. Social media brings constant distractions, constant binging, constant different things going on. So you really want to have them actually pay attention to just one thing for a few moments. So I mentioned before the concept of mindful eating. So mindful eating, you can do this as a family, you can do this with your kid, you can do this alone. So everyone in the family can, with dinner, can decide they'll take one bite at a time and pay attention to how the food looks. What does it taste like? What is the texture of it? Can you hear any noises when you're chewing? And then you do this together and then talk about your observations. That's one way to be mindful. So the other thing I'll talk about with managing this onslaught of social media is by practicing being mindful and being in the moment, you learn how to do one thing at a time, and you learn how to actually connect more with your emotions. So you really learn to kind of identify, what am I thinking? What am I feeling in this moment? And what can I do about it? And a lot of the times our teens, because especially of social media, don't take, or just the constant onslaught of things going on in their lives, don't take the time to do that. Well, we have the perfect opportunity right now to actually slow things down a bit and actually teach them how to pay more attention to themselves. All right. Another question, a lot of mindfulness questions today. How can mindfulness help anxiety? Mindfulness can help. Okay, so it's very similar to what we've got for depression as well. So I'll kind of talk about them in tandem. Mindfulness is, again, paying attention in a particular way in the present moment. When we do that, when we sit and we're actually with ourselves without any distractions, we start to learn, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And identifying. So one of the first things we teach about when we teach people about anxiety is they have to identify it as such. They have to identify that they are anxious in order to figure out how to deal with it. So with mindfulness, mindfulness helps with anxiety in one way, by teaching you to actually sit with the anxious feelings without trying to get rid of them. Because a lot of the times, think about what we try to do when we're anxious. We want to run. We want to be able to just get away from it as fast as possible. So with mindfulness, you actually learn how to sit there with that unpleasant feeling and tolerate it without doing something that maybe you don't want to do as a result. So for example, people sometimes will eat a lot when they're anxious. If you can actually sit with that uncomfortable emotion and watch that urge go by, we call it riding the wave, ride the wave of emotions, then you can actually get over that hump and actually not do any kind of eating that would be rather problematic or just something you didn't want to do. So that's one way that you can certainly deal with your anxiety that way. So that's how mindfulness can help. In the same way that I have a very related question is, can mindfulness help a depressed teenager get through this? Yes, I think now again, I'm making mindfulness sound like it's the answer to everything. And it's, if you get me on another day, I might actually tell you that it can be an answer for a lot of things. It's not the only answer, but certainly actually having people sit again and identify their emotions presently right now is a very important thing, because a lot of the times we're feeling very strong right now. We're feeling pretty strong emotions, and probably there's a lot of mood changes throughout the day. How good is it for a person to be able to say, I'm actually feeling sad. I'm feeling really scared. I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm feeling like I need to get out of this house at this point because I can't take being in here anymore. I'm feeling really cooped up. So I think one of the things that can help a person to deal with some of these sad feelings is to be able to express themselves. And the way they can do that is to sit and be with their emotions in that moment. So it's really important that you can all take as a fan, and it's really important you model this for your child too, to take a moment to sit and go, okay, ask yourself, what am I feeling? What is going on in this moment for me? And to actually recognize and acknowledge that emotion. It's like I'm reading these questions, right? They're kind of all flowing together right now. So the next question is, how can mindfulness help teens and parents deal with the uncertainty? I'm so glad you asked that question. That's one thing that I think people have really said to me helps to actually just put something into words. Uncertainty is a very scary thing for a lot of people. In a general day, a lot of people don't like not knowing what's going on. I have kids that'll tell me they get really scared about not knowing what time it is, or not knowing what they're going to be eating for dinner. So imagine not knowing the uncertainty. When am I going to be able to really be out of my house? When are we going to be able to go back to school? When am I going to be able to go back to my regular life? And the frightening thing for them is when we don't have an answer. So mindfulness can actually help us to sit and feel those feelings of uncertainty, to feel that anxiety that comes from it, that sadness that comes from it, that actual, sometimes it's almost for some people like a bursting feeling, and to be able to actually sit with it and recognize that emotion isn't going to hurt you and destroy you. That emotion is just an emotion. And if you can sit through it and ride that wave of emotion, then actually you'll recognize that, okay, I was able to tolerate it. I can get through it. And you know what the thing is? You got to keep doing it over and over and over again, because the uncertainty will come back and the fear will come back. But if you learn that tool of being able to sit with that emotion, it really helps quite a bit. So keep that in mind. And I also want to validate that uncertainty right now is the fear of uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen is incredibly normal right now. We're all facing it. And so one thing I might also recommend is to manage and I'm sure many people have said this on this very broadcast, is manage how much you're taking in terms of news. And so don't have that be your mindfulness activity. Don't have, I can mindfully pay attention to the news. Don't do that. Really try to find other ways, more good feeling ways to be mindful, more relaxing, calming ways to be mindful in this present time. Another question is, my husband has coronavirus. My teenage daughter is panicking. Can mindfulness help? Okay, so again, one of the things I like to tell people about mindfulness is that it certainly is good to start practicing before the crisis happens, but not everybody gets that opportunity, so that's okay. What I would strongly recommend is to really actually start with sometimes what is equated with mindfulness, but it isn't exactly the same thing, is to start doing some different kinds of relaxation and breathing exercises. So to learn how to, and if you go on YouTube, if you go online, which we're all on right now, let's face it, to go and look up videos on how to do deep breathing, deep muscle relaxation, body scans. There are tons of videos out there that teach you how to do this. That can help, because I'm imagining that your daughter is certainly scared of what's going to happen to your husband, as are you, I'm sure. And again, that feeling of not having control, that panic, that fear can really be very scary and crippling. So that is a body's reaction to fear. So what the relaxation does, what the body scan does, what all these different kinds of relaxation exercises do, is to help calm our bodies down, so we recognize that the threat isn't as imminent as it seems. So yes, I would recommend that to start. And then There's a lot. One of the things I haven't mentioned already, which really I'm remiss in doing so, is that there are a ton of online resources and apps that have to teach people how to meditate and to do mindfulness. So at the Child Mind Institute, we don't necessarily recommend any particular ones, but I can tell you that some of the more popular ones that people do are things called Headspace. There's one called Calm. There's one called Stop, Breathe, Think. And again, we're not endorsing these particular ones, but these are ones that people tell me they've used and have found, and there's other ones too, believe me, that have found to be useful. So I would encourage you to engage in downloading some of these apps and using them at the present time. Finally, actually, no, I'm not sure it's final, but here's another question. What are some mindfulness exercises we can do as a family? Oh, I really like that question. So again, I already mentioned the mindful eating. Dancing for me right now is a huge one that you can all do together. Put the tunes on, start boogieing, do whatever, it's an old word, but do whatever you need to do to be able to just, and be fully present in that moment. If your kid is a video game kid, start playing video games with them, even if you have no idea what you're doing, and make fun of yourself and just enjoy the moment. Have your kid teach you how to do that. Another thing you can do together is take a mindful walk. So when you go outside, try to spot different things in the environment. So I'm going to look for this color. I'm going to look for this animal or something like that. Or even if you're in the city, you know, I'm gonna spot the different like street signs and things like that. Okay, another thing, an unrelated question. This is actually a question from earlier on another broadcast. So I've imposed screen time limits on my kids, and I always say it's not good for them, but I don't actually have an answer for what it does to the brain. Okay, well, that's not something that, let's see. We don't know actually fully what that it does to the brain. We do know that it has some relationships with different hormones, and particularly when kids have this, especially we know, for example, that when the binging happens and different text messages come in and things come in, that it actually does release certain hormones in the brain that are rewards in our reward centers. So, you know, we have this debate about screen time. It's really helpful to not see it as just bad or good, because there really are advantages to screen time and internet use and social media that we've identified, including social media is a good for, especially now, for kids to be connected and to be able to feel less isolated and alone. But there's also everything in moderation. You can be on screens way too much, and that can definitely be associated with different problems. So I think it's very important that you really moderate your children's use, recognizing right now that they're going to probably be on screens more. I got my notification from Apple about my screen time use, and I almost yelled at the phone because I was like, come on, guys, it's a little harder right now. So forgive yourself for a little bit more screen time use, but continue to monitor use. I think that we are about out of time at this point. So I want to thank you all again for joining me this afternoon. I hope it was helpful. And remember, we'll be right back here at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning to answer more questions. In addition, the Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of the coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. We have resources to help, from daily tips to consultations to gold standard telehealth treatments. So again, go to childmind.org/coronavirus for any further information. Thanks again for having me this afternoon, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye.